I'm Lieutenant Commander Jordan Reese, 36 years old. I led a SEAL unit through Kandahar, kept my people alive under fire, and came home thinking discipline could fix anything. For years, I carried my family too, paid their bills, covered their mistakes, tried to be the good daughter in uniform. But when I checked into rehab and my father laughed, calling me a useless soldier turned junkie, I made a different choice. Have you ever been humiliated by the very people you protected? If you've ever given everything and been repaid with mockery, you'll understand this story. Tell me yours in the comments. You're not alone. Before I start, let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever had to stand your ground after being written off, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about reclaiming your worth. Because what happened next, when my SEAL unit walked through those rehab doors, changed everything. I watched my father's mouth move, but I stopped hearing the words somewhere around useless soldier turned junkie. The fluorescent lights in the rehab intake hallway buzz overhead like the generators we used in Kandahar. Same frequency, different continent. My hands don't shake anymore when I think about the desert. They save that for the quiet moments, the ones where nobody's watching. But right now, standing in line with my discharge papers folded in my jacket pocket and my father laughing to the intake nurse like this is all some cosmic joke, my hands are perfectly still. 3 months ago, I was Lieutenant Commander Jordan Reese, 04, leading briefings at 0600 and running damage assessments on operations that never made the news. Now I'm the daughter who couldn't hack civilian life, the one who needs intervention before the neighbors start asking questions. My mother stands beside my father, her purse clutched against her ribs like body armor. She hasn't looked at me since we left the house. The disrespect didn't start here. It started 6 months ago when I came home from my last deployment and my father asked if I'd gotten any real job offers yet. It was there when my brother Kyle filmed me at Thanksgiving, zooming in on my hands when they tremored over the turkey carving, posting it to his Instagram story with the caption, "When the coffee hits different." It lived in every conversation where my mother suggested I find something normal to do, and my father treated my Navy Achievement Medal like a participation trophy he found in the garage. At family dinners, they'd laugh about discipline. Kyle would salute his beer and say, "Still marching to breakfast, Commander?" Everyone thought it was hilarious. I'd smile, cut my food into precise sections, and say nothing about the blast that killed Petty Officer Chin and Seaman Rodriguez. Nothing about the ringing that never stops. Nothing about the moment I realized I was taking an extra pill for sleep, then another for pain, then another because the silence in this house was louder than any firefight. The pills started after my last deployment. Standard protocol: physical therapy for the shoulder where shrapnel decided to make a home, sleep aids for the insomnia, pain management for the nerve damage that makes my left hand feel like it's wrapped in static. I followed every dosage, every instruction, every refill appointment. I was precise about it, the same way I was precise about everything. But precision doesn't matter when you're using medication to numb something that has nothing to do with physical pain. My father found the bottle 3 weeks ago. I'd left it on the bathroom counter, careless, unlike me, and he'd walked in without knocking. He held it up to the light like he was inspecting evidence, then looked at me with something close to disgust. "Just like the others," he said. "Another junkie in uniform." I didn't correct him. Didn't tell him that the others he was referring to were veterans who'd carried more weight than he'd ever understand. Didn't mention that I'd spent 3 years commanding a SEAL unit through operations that would turn his accountant's brain inside out. I just took the bottle back, walked to my room, and started planning my exit strategy. The intervention happened 2 days later. My mother scheduled it like a dentist appointment, clinical, efficient, embarrassing. They sat me down in the living room with Kyle recording on his phone for accountability, and my father reading from a printed list of concerns. The word burden came up 4 times. The phrase family reputation came up 6. Nobody said the word Kandahar. Nobody asked about the blast. Nobody wanted to know why I couldn't sleep through the night or why certain frequencies made me want to crawl out of my skin. My mother cried, but it felt performative. My father didn't cry at all. He just handed me a brochure for this facility and said he'd drive me tomorrow before the neighbors notice. I didn't argue. Arguing would have required me to care what they thought, and I'd stopped caring somewhere between the second family dinner where they mocked my service and the morning I realized I was taking pills just to sit in the same room with them. So here we are. Intake line at a rehabilitation facility 2 hours outside the city. My father's still talking to the nurse, voice loud enough that the other families waiting can hear. Guess the Navy finally broke her, he says, like it's a punchline he's been saving. The nurse, to her credit, doesn't laugh. She glances at me with something that might be sympathy or might be pity. I can't tell anymore. My mother fidgets with her purse strap. She's wearing the same perfume she wore to my commissioning ceremony, Chanel No. 5, the one she saves for important occasions. I wonder if she thinks this qualifies. I wonder if she remembers standing in the crowd at Annapolis, watching me take my oath, crying into my father's shoulder about how proud she was. That version of her feels like a different person. Maybe she is. The intake nurse asks for my next of kin. Standard procedure, emergency contact information. My father interrupts before I can answer. She's done enough damage, he says. We're just here to drop her off. I sign the papers in silence. My hands shake now, not from the pills, not from the nerve damage, but from the effort it takes to keep my voice level. The nurse slides a clipboard across the desk. Name, rank, service branch, reason for admission. I fill it out in block letters, the same way I filled out after-action reports. Precise. Clinical. True. When I finish, my father's already walking toward the exit. My mother lingers for a moment, her mouth opening like she's going to say something, then closes it again. She follows him. Kyle's still filming, his phone angled to catch the moment the intake doors close behind me. I hear him laugh, sharp, quick, the same sound he makes when he wins at poker. I look down at the floor tiles. White linoleum, scuffed at the edges from years of people walking this same path. My Navy ring catches the light gold band, Academy crest, the date of my commissioning etched on the inside. I think about the transmission protocol we used in Kandahar, the phrase that ended every radio call, confirmed every order, closed every loop. Copy that, I whisper. The staff escort me through the doors. Behind me, I hear the camera shutter click one more time. The flash reflects off my ring, off the polished floor, off the glass doors that separate this moment from everything that came before it. My father's voice fades. My mother's perfume disappears. Kyle's laughter becomes white noise. The betrayal is complete. My family has weaponized my lowest moment for mockery, and I've let them. Not because I'm weak, I've never been weak, but because some battles aren't worth fighting. Some people aren't worth the ammunition. And some doors, once closed, should stay that way. The intake coordinator asks if I need anything. Water, a moment, a phone call. I shake my head. I don't need anything from them. I needed them 6 months ago when I came home broken and trying to hide it. I needed them when the pills became a problem and I was too ashamed to ask for help. I needed them when the nightmares were so bad I couldn't trust myself to drive. But I don't need them now. Now, I need to remember who I was before I walked into this house and let their disrespect chip away at the person I'd built in the desert. I need to remember the commander who kept her unit alive through an ambush that should have killed us all. I need to remember that discipline isn't just about following orders, it's about knowing when to give them to yourself. The coordinator hands me a folder with my room assignment and schedule. Group therapy at 0900. Individual counseling at 1300. Medication management at 1600. It reads like a patrol roster. I can work with that. I walk down the hallway, away from the intake desk, away from the doors, away from the family that stopped being mine the moment they decided my service was a punchline instead of a sacrifice. My footsteps echo. The walls are painted institutional beige. It smells like disinfectant and something else, resignation maybe. Or hope? I can't tell yet. Behind me, through the glass doors, I see my father's car pull away. My mother's in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. Kyle's in the back, probably editing the video already, adding captions, making it digestible for an audience that doesn't know me and never will. I don't wave. I don't cry. I don't break. I just keep walking. Because that's what you do when the mission changes. You adapt. You survive. You complete the objective. And my objective now is simple: get clean, get strong, get out. The rest will come later. Kandahar smelled like dust and diesel fuel, and after 6 months, I stopped noticing it. What I never stopped noticing was the weight, not the gear, though that was real enough, but the other kind. The kind that settles on your shoulders when people call you boss and mean it. When 19-year-old kids from Nebraska look at you to decide if they're going home alive. I wasn't supposed to be there, according to half the people who saw my personnel file. Female officers in special operations were still a new enough concept that people said it out loud, female officer, like the adjective mattered more than the noun. But command didn't care about optics when they assigned me to SEAL Team 6 Bravo. They cared that I could plan an operation under pressure and execute it without getting anyone killed. That I'd completed the same training as everyone else and scored higher than most. That I didn't flinch when the mortars started landing close enough to feel the concussion in your chest. The men I led didn't care either. Not after the first month. Chief Petty Officer Nate Larkin made that clear during our initial briefing. He was 32, career Navy, 2 deployments under his belt, and the kind of operator who could disassemble a rifle blindfolded and probably had. When I walked into the operations tent and introduced myself as Lieutenant Commander Reese, he looked me over once, not assessing, just acknowledging, and said, "Welcome aboard, ma'am. We're ready when you are. No test. No posturing. Just respect, clean and professional." The rest of the unit followed his lead. Petty Officer First Class Miguel Vega, who ran point on every patrol like he was born for it. Petty Officer Doc Simons, who could stabilize a sucking chest wound with duct tape and calm authority. Seaman Chin, 23 years old, always smiling, who played guitar in the rec tent and made everyone forget where we were for 5 minutes at a time. Seaman Rodriguez, who called his mother every week and never missed a chance to remind everyone that Texas was objectively superior to all other states. We ran operations for 3 months without incident. Standard rotation, patrol, intel gathering, site security for coalition forces. Nothing glamorous. Nothing that would make the news. Just the kind of steady, professional work that keeps a war running. Operation Foxgate changed that. The brief came through at 0400 on a Tuesday. Coalition convoy ambushed 15 clicks north of our position, multiple casualties, request for immediate support. We rolled out in under 10 minutes, 4 vehicles, 12 operators, full tactical gear. I rode in the second truck with Larkin driving and Vega on the 50 cal. The road was empty, which should have been the first warning sign. In Kandahar, empty roads meant someone was waiting. We found the convoy at 0515. 3 vehicles, 2 burning, 1 tipped on its side. Small arms fire from the ridge line to the east. I counted 6 hostiles, maybe more behind the rocks. The coalition forces were pinned, taking fire from 2 directions. We had maybe 4 minutes before they were overrun. Larkin looked at me. I looked at the ridge. The tactical manual would have said to call for air support, establish a perimeter, wait for backup. The tactical manual didn't account for the fact that backup was 20 minutes out, and these people didn't have 20 minutes. Vega, lay down suppressing fire on the ridge. Larkin, take Chin and Rodriguez, flank left. Doc, you're with me. We're going to the convoy. Nobody questioned it. Nobody hesitated. Vega opened up with the 50 cal, the sound so loud it felt like the air was tearing. Larkin's team moved fast, low, and quiet, disappearing into the rocks. Doc and I went straight down the middle, sprinting across open ground while rounds kicked up dust at our feet. I remember thinking, very clearly, that this was either going to work or it was going to be the last decision I ever made. We reached the convoy. 6 wounded, 2 critical. Doc started TRIA immediately, his hands moving faster than seemed possible. I returned fire, covering his position, counting rounds, counting hostiles, counting seconds. Vega's 50 cal kept them pinned. Larkin's team appeared on the left flank, closing the gap. The hostiles broke cover, trying to reposition. That's when the IED went off. I didn't see it. Didn't hear it, not really, just felt the world turn inside out. The shockwave lifted me off my feet and threw me 6 meters. I hit the ground hard enough that my teeth clicked together, and I tasted blood. My ears were ringing, high-pitched, and endless. I tried to stand and my left arm wouldn't cooperate. I looked down and saw blood, a lot of it, soaking through my sleeve. Doc was beside me. His mouth was moving, but I couldn't hear him. He was pulling something out of my shoulder, metal, jagged, the size of my thumb. I watched him work with clinical detachment, the same way I'd watch him work on anyone else. Then he wrapped it, tight and efficient, and hauled me upright. The convoy was secure. Larkin's team had neutralized the hostiles. Vega was still on the 50 cal, scanning for secondary threats. And behind us, where Chin and Rodriguez had been flanking, I saw Rodriguez first. He was sitting against a rock, staring at his hands. Doc ran to him. I followed, slower, my left side not quite working right. Rodriguez was fine. Shaken, bleeding from a scalp wound, but fine. Chin wasn't fine. He was 10 meters away, lying in the dirt. Doc checked for a pulse anyway, professional to the end, but I already knew. The blast had caught him in the open. There was nothing we could do. Nothing anyone could do. I stood there, watching Doc close Chen's eyes, and thought about the guitar in the rec tent. About his mother, who called every week. About the fact that I'd given the order that put him in that position. Larkin appeared at my shoulder. "Ma'am, we need to evac." I nodded. Couldn't speak yet. Didn't trust my voice. We loaded the wounded into our vehicles. 6 coalition forces saved. 1 operator lost. By the numbers, it was a successful mission. By the measure of anything that mattered, it was a failure I'd carry forever. The flight back to base was silent. Rodriguez sat across from me, staring at nothing. Vega cleaned his weapon with mechanical precision. Doc checked and rechecked his med kit, like he could find something he'd missed. Larkin drove, his jaw set, his hands steady on the wheel. Nobody blamed me. That was worse, somehow. I wanted someone to say it, to call it what it was. A command decision that saved 6 and killed 1. A calculation I'd made in under 5 seconds that I'd spend the rest of my life replaying. But SEALs don't blame their commanders for combat decisions. They trust you to make the call and they live with the outcome. I spent 2 weeks in medical after that. Shrapnel removal, infection protocol, physical therapy for the nerve damage that made my left hand feel like static. The unit visited every day. Larkin brought coffee, terrible base coffee that tasted like burned rubber, but he brought it anyway. Vega updated me on patrol status. Doc checked my stitches with professional efficiency and told me I was healing clean. They never mentioned Chin. Not once. Not because they didn't care, but because they knew I was carrying it and adding their grief to mine wouldn't help anyone. When I was cleared for duty, they threw a small ceremony. Nothing official, just the unit, standing in the operations tent, and Larkin handing me a folded flag. "For Foxgate," he said. "Command approved it. You saved 6 lives, ma'am." I took the flag. Didn't cry, though I wanted to. Just said, "Chin saved them too." "Yes, ma'am." He did. The rest of the deployment was quieter. We ran patrols, gathered intel, maintained security. Professional, efficient, careful. I came home with a Navy Achievement Medal, a Purple Heart I didn't ask for, and shrapnel scars that ached when it rained. My family met me at the airport. My father shook my hand, didn't hug me, just shook my hand and said, "Glad you're back safe." My mother cried and fussed over my shoulder. Kyle took pictures for Instagram. They asked about the medals. They didn't ask about Kandahar. At dinner that night, my father made a joke about playing soldier. My mother asked if I'd thought about graduate school. Kyle filmed me trying to cut my steak with a hand that wouldn't stop tremoring and posted it with laughing emojis. I thought about Chen's guitar in the rec tent, about Rodriguez's hands shaking as he sat against that rock, about Larkin's coffee and Vega's steady silence and Doc's efficiency under pressure. I thought about the fact that these people, my family, would never understand what I'd carried and what I'd lost. But I smiled anyway. Performed calm professionalism. Said all the right things. And when I went to bed that night, I took a pill for the pain in my shoulder and another for the ringing in my ears and a third because the silence in this house was worse than any firefight I'd survived. That's when it started. Not with the blast. Not with the shrapnel. but with the quiet realization that the people who should have understood me the most understood me the least. And that's how you fall apart slowly, quietly, while everyone's watching and nobody sees. The first night in rehab, I don't sleep. Not because of withdrawal, though that's coming, the counselors have made that very clear, but because the room is too quiet. No generators humming. No distant radio chatter. No Vega snoring in the bunk next door. Just silence, thick and absolute, the kind that makes you notice every thought you've been trying to outrun. They put me in a single room on the second floor. Institutional furniture, industrial carpet, a window that looks out over a parking lot. There's a desk, a chair, a bed with sheets that smell like industrial detergent. On the desk, a binder with facility rules, a daily schedule, and a journal with a note on the first page that says writing helps. The handwriting is optimistic, looping, nothing like the block letters I've used for mission reports. I sit on the bed and open the binder. Group therapy at 0900. Individual counseling at 1300. Recreational activities at 1500. Medication management at 1600. Dinner at 1800. Lights out at 2200. It reads like a patrol schedule. I can work with structure. Structure is familiar. What's not familiar is the silence. In Kandahar, silence meant danger. It meant something was wrong, someone was missing, the pattern had changed. Here, silence is supposed to be peaceful. Restorative. I don't find it peaceful. I find it suffocating. At 0300, I give up on sleep and start writing in the journal. Not because I think it'll help, but because mission logs were always how I processed operations. Write down what happened, identify problems, propose solutions. This shouldn't be different. But it is different. Because mission logs are objective. They don't include the part where your father called you a junkie in front of strangers. They don't document the moment you realized your family was more concerned about the neighbor's opinions than your survival. They don't have a section for feelings or emotional processing or whatever therapeutic language the counselors will use tomorrow. I write anyway. Start with facts. Arrived at facility at 1400 on Tuesday. Intake processing completed by 1500. Current status: stable, clear-headed, angry. I cross out angry and write focused instead. Then I cross out focused and write angry again because lying in a journal defeats the purpose. At 0600, someone knocks on the door. A nurse, late 30s, kind face, tired eyes, asks if I slept. I tell her no. She doesn't seem surprised. First nights are always hard, she says. Breakfast is in 30 minutes. You don't have to eat, but showing up helps. I show up. Because showing up is what you do, even when you don't want to. The dining hall is half full. Veterans mostly. I can tell by the posture, the way they skin rooms, the careful distance they maintain from each other. A few civilians scattered throughout, looking lost or defiant or both. I take a tray, get coffee and toast, sit alone at a table near the window. A man in his 40s sits down across from me without asking. Army, probably. He's got that specific weariness that comes from deployments that never quite end. He doesn't say anything, just nods once. I nod back. We eat in silence. It's the most comfortable I've felt since I walked through the intake doors. Group therapy at 0900 is exactly what I expected and worse. 15 people in a circle, a counselor with a clipboard and gentle eyes, and the kind of forced vulnerability that makes my skin crawl. We go around introducing ourselves. Names, service branch, why we're here. When it's my turn, I keep it simple. Jordan. Navy. Kandahar. The counselor waits for more. I don't give it. She moves on. A Marine corporal talks about IEDs and nightmares. An Army sergeant talks about pain medication that stopped being about pain. A civilian woman talks about losing her job and her family and finding pills in a bathroom cabinet. Everyone's story is different and everyone's story is the same. Something broke. They tried to fix it alone. It didn't work. I listen without commenting. The counselor asks if I have anything to share. I say, not yet. She accepts it. By 1300, individual counseling, I'm ready to perform. I've sat through enough debriefs to know the script, acknowledge the problem, demonstrate awareness, commit to change. The counselor, Dr. Martinez, 40-something, competent energy, doesn't buy it. You're very controlled, she says. I'm a naval officer. You're a person in recovery. I'm both. She writes something down. Tell me about Kandahar. I give her the briefing version. Deployment, operations, combat casualty, returned home, struggled with adjustment. Clean. Professional. Factual. Tell me about the pills, she says. Prescribed. Post-injury protocol. Sleep aids, pain management. When did it stop being protocol? That's the question, isn't it? When does following orders become dependence? When does medication become escape? I don't have a clean answer, so I give her the truth. When I realized I was taking them to sit at dinner with my family without wanting to leave. She writes that down too. Why did you want to leave? Because they don't understand what I did. And they don't want to. Did you try to help them understand? I think about that. About the dinner table conversations where I mentioned Kandahar and got silence. About the nights I couldn't sleep and didn't tell anyone. About the moment I realized I was more alone in my parents' house than I ever was in the desert. No, I say. I didn't. Why not? Because some people don't want to understand. They want you to be who they remember. And who they remember doesn't have shrapnel scars or night terrors or prescriptions they can judge. Dr. Martinez nods slowly. That must have been isolating. It was tactical, I say. Easier to maintain control than admit I was losing it. Is that working for you? I almost laugh. I'm in rehab. So no. She closes her notebook. Jordan, recovery isn't about control. It's about letting go of the idea that you have to carry everything alone. I don't respond. Because I've been carrying things alone since Chin died in the dirt, and I had to tell his mother over a satellite phone that her son wasn't coming home. Letting go isn't an option I've learned. The days blur into routine. 0600 wake up. 0900 group therapy. 1300 individual sessions. 1500 recreational activities that feel like mandatory morale exercises. 1600 medication management, where they monitor the taper protocol with clinical precision. 1800 dinner. 2200 lights out. I follow the schedule because structure is familiar. Because discipline is the only thing I have left that feels like mine. The tremors start on day 4. Not the nerve damage kind, I'm used to those. These are deeper, chemical, the body realizing it's not getting what it's been trained to expect. My hands shake when I hold my coffee cup. My legs feel unstable when I walk. At night, the sweats come cold and complete, soaking through my shirt, leaving me shivering in the dark. Doc Simons would know what to do. He'd check vitals, adjust dosage, talk me through it with that calm efficiency he used in the field. But Doc Simons is still deployed, still patching up operators who need him more than I do. So I deal with it alone. Ride it out. Mark the hours until it passes. Group therapy on day 5. Someone asks me why I'm so quiet. It's the Marine Corporal Jenkins, I think. He's been here 3 weeks, speaks with the kind of raw honesty that comes from having nothing left to lose. You just sit there, he says. Not accusatory, just observational. Don't share. Don't react. Just sit. I consider not answering. But the counselor is watching, and I'm tired of performing silence. I'm listening, I say. To what? To you. All of you. Trying to figure out if any of this actually works. The room goes quiet. The counselor, different one today, younger, newer, looks uncertain. Jenkins just nods. Does it? He asks. Work. I don't know yet. Fair enough. After the session, Jenkins catches up to me in the hallway. Officer, he asks. Lieutenant Commander. Thought so. You've got that command posture. He pauses. I was under a female officer once. Captain Mendez. Best CO I ever had. Didn't take any garbage, didn't play politics, just did the job. He looks at me directly. You remind me of her. I don't know what to say to that, so I just nod. He nods back and walks away. It's the first time since I've been here that someone's seen past the addiction to the person who wore the uniform. It shouldn't matter. It does. By day 7, the withdrawal symptoms peak. I spend 14 hours in my room, too nauseous to eat, too restless to sleep. The nurse checks on me every 2 hours. Vitals, fluids, quiet reassurance that this is normal, this will pass, I'm doing fine. I don't feel fine. I feel like my body's betraying me, like the discipline I've relied on for 15 years means nothing when chemistry takes over. It's humbling. It's infuriating. It's necessary. At 2200, I finally sleep. Not well, not peacefully, but I sleep. Day 8. I wake up feeling almost human. The tremors have calmed. The nausea's gone. My head is clear, not calm, not peaceful, but clear. I can think without the static. In group therapy, I speak for the first time beyond introductions. I led a team in Kandahar, I say. Operation went bad. Lost a man. Came home and couldn't talk about it. Family didn't want to hear it anyway. Started using pills to numb the gap between who I was and who they wanted me to be. I stop. Wait for judgment. It doesn't come. The counselor asks, "What would you tell that man's family now?" I think about Chen's mother. About the satellite call where I explained, in careful military language, that her son died serving his country. About how inadequate those words were. About how they're still the only words I have. I'd tell them the truth, I say. That he was brave. That he saved lives. That I'm sorry it wasn't enough to save his. Do you blame yourself? Every day. Does that help? No. But it's honest. The counselor nods. Jenkins, across the circle, meets my eyes and nods too. The civilian woman who lost her job starts crying quietly. Someone passes her tissues. We sit in the heaviness together. It's not comfortable. It's not healing. But it's real. And real is something I haven't felt in months. Individual counseling that afternoon, Dr. Martinez asks about my family. I tell her the truth this time, not the briefing version, the actual truth. About the jokes. The dismissals. The way they weaponized my struggle for their own comfort. Have they contacted you? She asks. No. How does that feel? Expected. That's not a feeling. I pause. Search for the actual word. Confirming, I say finally. It confirms what I already knew. That I don't matter to them as much as their image does. That must hurt. It does. But I can work with confirmed intelligence. It's the uncertainty that's dangerous. She writes that down. Jordan, you keep using military language to describe emotional experiences. It's the language I have. Maybe part of recovery is finding new language. I don't argue. But I think about how every significant moment of my adult life has been defined by military structure. How I learned to lead under pressure, make life and death decisions, and carry loss without collapsing. How that same training now makes me sound cold when I'm trying to be honest. I'll work on it, I say. By day 10, I've started to recognize patterns. The Army sergeant always sits in the same chair. The civilian woman only speaks after someone else shares first. Jenkins makes dark jokes to deflect from real pain. And me, I catalog everyone's coping mechanisms while ignoring my own. Dr. Martinez points this out during session 12. You're very good at analyzing others, she says. Intelligence gathering. Occupational habit. What happens when you turn that analysis inward? I don't like what I see. Which is? I lean back in the chair. Stare at the ceiling. Try to find words that aren't military protocol or tactical assessment. Someone who is good at her job, I say slowly. Someone who kept people alive under pressure. Someone who came home and couldn't translate that competence into civilian life. Who let her family's disrespect become permission to stop respecting herself. Who started using medication as mission fuel instead of medical treatment. Who forgot that discipline means knowing when to ask for help, not just when to give orders. Silence. Dr. Martinez doesn't write anything down. Just waits. Someone who's ashamed, I add quietly. Not of the service. Of the fall. Jordan, she says gently. The fall isn't the failure. Staying down would be. I nod. Don't trust my voice to respond. Your family's reaction, she continues, tells me more about them than it does about you. You came home from war and they made it about their comfort. That's not your failure. That's theirs. I want to believe that. But belief requires letting go of the idea that I could have done something different, been someone different, prevented this somehow. And I've spent my entire career believing that perfect execution prevents casualties. Chen's death taught me otherwise. This should too. On day 14, 2 weeks in, I receive mail. A single envelope, postmarked from my hometown. My mother's handwriting. I stare at it for 10 minutes before opening it. Inside, a short note on monogrammed stationery. Please don't tell anyone about this. 5 words. No apology. No concern. Just an image management request from a woman who watched her daughter check into rehab and worried about what the neighbors might think. I fold the note carefully. Put it back in the envelope. Set it on my desk. That sentence does more damage than the detox. Because it confirms, in writing, that my recovery matters less than their reputation. That I'm not a daughter in crisis. I'm a problem to be hidden. I don't cry. Don't rage. Don't call her. I just sit there in my institutional room with its industrial carpet and optimistic journal and realize that I've been waiting for them to care. Waiting for the moment they'd show up and see me really see me and offer something other than judgment. They're not coming. They never were. That night, I write in the journal for the first time with complete honesty. Mission log, day 14. Family confirmed as non-supportive element. Adjust expectations accordingly. Refocus on primary objective. Complete recovery independent of external validation. New strategy. Stop waiting for people who aren't coming. Start building support structure from available resources. Status. Stable. Clear-headed. Done waiting. I close the journal. Look out the window at the parking lot, the streetlights, the dark beyond. Somewhere out there, Larkin is leading patrols. Vega is running point. Doc is keeping people alive. They're doing the work without me, because that's what professionals do. They adapt. They continue the mission. I can do the same. The next morning, in group therapy, I speak without being asked. I got a letter from my mother yesterday, I say. 5 words. Please don't tell anyone about this. No questions about how I'm doing. Just a request to protect their image. Jenkins winces. The civilian woman looks horrified. The counselor waits. I'm done waiting for them to understand, I continue. Done trying to earn respect from people who don't want to give it. I'm here because I need to be. Because I lost control and need to get it back. Not for them. For me. That's significant progress, the counselor says. It's tactical adjustment, I reply. When your position's compromised, you don't reinforce it. You move. Jenkins actually smiles at that. Spoken like a real officer. For the first time since I walked through the intake doors, I smile back. That afternoon, Dr. Martinez asks what changed. Clarity, I say. I was still treating my family like an asset I needed to secure. They're not. They're a liability I need to extract from. That sounds very military. It's very honest. She considers that. What does extraction look like for you? Boundaries. Distance. Building a life that doesn't require their approval. Do you have support for that? I think about Larkin bringing terrible coffee to medical. About Vega's steady silence. About Doc's efficient competence. About Jenkins nodding across the therapy circle. I'm working on it, I say. By day 16, I've stopped checking for mail. Stopped wondering if my father will call. Stopped hoping my mother will show up. Not because I don't care, I do, more than I want to admit, but because hoping for something that won't happen is tactical incompetence. Instead, I focus on what I can control. Attending every session. Participating honestly. Learning the difference between numbing pain and processing it. Rebuilding the discipline that kept me alive in Kandahar and can keep me stable here. It's slow work. Unglamorous. Nothing that would make the news. But it's mine. And that's enough. 1 year later, I'm standing in front of 200 people at the Naval Medical Center in San Diego, and my hands aren't shaking. Not from nerve damage, not from withdrawal, not from fear. They're steady on the podium, holding notes I won't need because I've lived every word I'm about to say. The symposium is called Resilience in Recovery, Leadership Through Crisis, and I'm the keynote speaker. Not because I asked to be, but because Commander Sarah Vickers, who runs the Navy's Behavioral Health Division, called me 6 months ago and said, "We need officers who will tell the truth about this. Will you?" I said yes. Not immediately. I spent 3 days thinking about it, weighing exposure against impact, personal cost against potential benefit. But eventually, I realized that staying silent about recovery is just another way of letting shame win. And I didn't survive Kandahar and Rehab and the long, ugly year that followed just to hide what I learned. So here I am. Dress blues, ribbons sharp, posture exact. Lieutenant Commander Jordan Reese, 04, about to tell a room full of military medical professionals and recovering service members that falling apart doesn't disqualify you from leadership. Sometimes it's the prerequisite. The introduction is standard. My service record, my deployments, my awards. What they don't mention is the 16 months I spent rebuilding myself piece by piece, learning that discipline isn't the same as control, and control isn't the same as health. What they don't say is that the woman standing here is fundamentally different from the one who checked into rehab while her father laughed. I step to the microphone. The room quiets. 200 faces, most of them veterans, all of them waiting to see if I'll give them the sanitized version or the real one. I choose real. 1 year ago, I was standing in a rehab intake line while my father told the staff I was another useless soldier turned junkie. He was wrong about useless. He was wrong about soldier, I'm Navy. Scattered laughs. But he was right that I had a problem. And the fact that he was my father, saying those words in that moment, tells you something important about how we talk about mental health and addiction in military families. Or rather, how we don't. I pause. Let that land. Continue. I'm not here to tell you a redemption story where everything worked out perfectly. I'm here to tell you the truth. Recovery is tactical, unglamorous, and ongoing. It doesn't end when you leave treatment. It doesn't end when people start respecting you again. It becomes part of your operational baseline, something you manage, monitor, and maintain for the rest of your career. I see heads nodding. Good. They're with me. In Kandahar, I commanded a SEAL unit through operations that required split-second decisions with life-or-death consequences. I was good at it. I kept people alive. I made calls that saved missions. And then I made a call that got a good man killed, and I came home carrying that weight in ways the military prepares you for and ways it doesn't. The room is completely silent now. Even the people taking notes have stopped writing. The military trains you for tactical stress, for combat decisions, for leadership under fire. What it doesn't always train you for is the transition home, where your family thinks PTSD is something you should just get over, where insomnia and nerve damage get dismissed as weakness, where asking for help feels like admitting you can't handle the job. I grip the podium. Not because I need the support, but because this next part still costs something to say out loud. I started using prescribed medication to manage legitimate pain and sleep issues. Standard protocol. I followed every dosage. I did everything right. And somewhere in that process, I stopped using medication for medical reasons and started using it to numb the gap between who I was and who my family wanted me to be. That transition happened so gradually I didn't recognize it until I was already dependent. A hand goes up in the back. A Navy corpsman, young, maybe 25. I nod at him. Ma'am, how did you know? When it crossed the line. Good question. Honest question. Deserves an honest answer. I didn't, I say. Not until I was taking pills just to sit at dinner with my family without wanting to leave. When medication stops treating symptoms and starts treating situations, that's your warning sign. But by the time I recognized it, I'd already normalized it. That's how addiction works. It's tactical. It adapts to your defenses. The corpsman nods. Sits back down. I continue. My family staged an intervention. Not because they wanted to help me, but because they were worried about appearances. My father drove me to rehab and mocked my service to the intake staff. My brother filmed it for social media. My mother sent me one message during my entire stay. Please don't tell anyone about this. I hear sharp intakes of breath around the room. See people shifting uncomfortably. Good. They should be uncomfortable. This is uncomfortable truth. I tell you this not for sympathy, but for context. Because recovery doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens while people judge you, misunderstand you, weaponize your struggle for their own purposes. And one of the most important things I learned in treatment is this: you cannot base your recovery on external validation. You cannot wait for people who don't understand to suddenly understand. You have to do the work regardless of whether anyone's cheering for you. I click to the next slide. It's a simple mission planning framework: objective, resources, obstacles, strategy. I approached recovery the same way I approached operations in Kandahar. I identified the objective: get clean, rebuild stability, return to function. I assessed available resources, treatment staff, fellow veterans in recovery, my former SEAL unit who actually understood what I'd carried. I cataloged obstacles: withdrawal, shame, family dysfunction, career concerns. And I developed a strategy: complete the program, establish boundaries, rebuild support structures that actually supported me. Another slide. This one shows a timeline: 30 days in treatment, 90 days outpatient, 6 months rebuilding routine, 1 year maintaining stability. The first 30 days were tactical survival. Managing withdrawal, attending every session, learning to articulate trauma without military jargon. The counselors kept telling me to talk about feelings. I kept giving them situation reports. Eventually, we found a middle ground where I could be honest without sounding like I was briefing a mission. Quiet laughter. They understand the gap between military communication and therapeutic language. We all do. Days 30 to 90 were about reintegration. I moved out of my parents' house. That was non-negotiable. I found an apartment near the base, started outpatient counseling, began the slow process of figuring out who I was without pills and without the family dynamics that had become toxic. I ran every morning. Not because I enjoyed it, but because discipline was the one thing that still felt like mine. I pause. Take a breath. This next part is harder. Around day 60, my father called. First contact since he dropped me at intake. He said he'd been thinking about what happened, that maybe he'd been too harsh. He wanted to have dinner. Talk things through. I said no. I see surprise on some faces. They expected reconciliation. That's the story people want. Family comes around. Everyone heals, credits roll. I said no because I wasn't ready. Because forgiveness isn't something you owe people just because they're family. Because I was still building stability, and I knew that sitting across from him would cost me more than I could afford to spend. That was probably the hardest tactical decision I've made since Kandahar, choosing my recovery over his comfort. A woman in the third row is crying quietly. A captain, I think. Someone who understands exactly what I'm describing. By day 90, I was functional. Not healed, functional. I could sleep without medication. I could sit with discomfort without numbing it. I could think about Kandahar without spiraling. That's not the same as being okay, but it's the foundation okay gets built on. Next slide. 6-month milestone markers. Month 4, I started teaching leadership seminars at the VA. Nothing fancy, just small groups of veterans talking about command under pressure, decision-making with incomplete information, carrying loss without letting it paralyze you. Turns out the skills that make you a good officer are the same skills that make recovery sustainable: discipline, honesty, adaptability, and knowing when to ask for support. I click again. The slide shows a photo, me and 5 guys in civilian clothes, standing outside a San Diego restaurant. Larkin, Vega, Doc Simons, Rodriguez, and 2 newer team members I hadn't met before. We're all smiling. Real smiles, not performance. Month 5, my former SEAL unit visited. They were stateside for training rotations, and Commander Larkin called to see if I wanted to meet up. I almost said no. I wasn't sure I wanted them to see me in recovery, still rebuilding. But Larkin said something that changed my mind. He said, "Ma'am, we've seen you at your worst. Kandahar, medical, the whole thing. You think recovery makes you look weak? You're wrong. It makes you look like exactly what you are, someone who doesn't quit." My voice catches slightly. I clear my throat, continue. We met for dinner. They treated me exactly the same way they always had, with respect, with humor, with the kind of comfortable professionalism that comes from trusting someone with your life. They updated me on operations, asked about my counseling work, told terrible jokes. And at the end of the night, Larkin said, "We're glad you're still fighting, boss." I have to pause, collect myself. Because even now, a year later, remembering that night, being seen and valued by the people whose respect actually meant something, hits harder than I expect. That dinner did more for my recovery than 6 months of therapy. Not because therapy wasn't working, but because it reminded me who I was before the pills, before the family dysfunction, before everything fell apart. I was someone people trusted. Someone who led well. Someone worth fighting for. Next slide. The 9-month mark. Month 9, I met with my mother. Not my father, I still wasn't ready for that. Just my mother at a neutral location for coffee. She apologized. Said she'd been scared and hadn't known how to help. Said she was sorry for the letter, for the silence, for not visiting. I accepted her apology. But I also told her the truth, that her fear had caused real damage, that please don't tell anyone had done more harm than the addiction itself, and that rebuilding trust would take time. I see people leaning forward, invested in this part of the story. She asked what she could do. I told her, learn about veteran mental health. Stop treating my service like something embarrassing. Respect my boundaries even when she doesn't understand them. She agreed. We've had coffee 3 more times since then. It's not warm. It's not easy. But it's honest. And honest is better than pretending. The timeline slide advances to 12 months. Present day. 1 year out, I'm here. Speaking to you. Teaching leadership courses. Mentoring junior officers through transition struggles. Working with the Navy's resilience programs to develop better support structures for service members dealing with mental health and addiction. I'm functional, stable, and clean. My hands shake sometimes, that's permanent nerve damage from Kandahar. But they don't shake from withdrawal anymore. And they don't shake from shame. I close the presentation. Face the room directly. Here's what I want you to understand. Command isn't about perfection. It's about recovery with integrity. It's about making decisions with incomplete information and living with the consequences. It's about knowing that leadership includes leading yourself through the hardest operations you'll ever face, and those operations aren't always in combat zones. I see nods throughout the room. People taking notes again. Recording this. If you're in recovery, you're not disqualified from service. You're learning skills that make you better at it: resilience, self-awareness, the humility to ask for help. If you're supporting someone in recovery, understand that your judgment does damage and your respect does healing. And if you're struggling right now, wondering if it's worth fighting for stability when everything feels broken, I'm telling you, it is. Not because recovery is easy or fast or comfortable, but because the alternative is staying down when you're built to stand. I pause. Final slide. Just 1 sentence. It's not where you fell that defines you, it's who saw you stand back up. Thank you. The applause is immediate, sustained. People standing. I see tears on some faces, determination on others. The Navy corpsman from earlier is recording on his phone, probably for someone who needs to hear this, someone who's where I was a year ago. Commander Vickers approaches the podium as I step back. She shakes my hand, then turns to the audience. Lieutenant Commander Reese will be available for questions in the adjacent conference room. Additionally, her story has been incorporated into our resilience training curriculum, with her permission, and will be used in leadership development programs across the Navy. This is what right looks like: honesty, accountability, and service that includes serving yourself when necessary. The question and answer session runs 90 minutes. People ask about withdrawal protocols, family dynamics, career implications, medication management, therapy effectiveness. I answer everything honestly. No sanitizing, no deflecting. If I don't know something, I say so and point them toward resources that do. A young lieutenant asks if recovery affected my promotion potential. I tell him the truth. Yes, initially. My service record now includes mental health treatment and substance use disorder. Some promotion boards will see that as disqualifying. Others will see it as evidence of resilience. I can't control which. But here's what I can control, I add. My performance. My leadership. My continued service. I'm being considered for O5 next cycle, Commander. If I make it, great. If I don't, I'm still the same officer who led SEALs through Kandahar and had the discipline to rebuild herself when everything fell apart. That's not nothing. A senior chief asks how I handle stress now, without medication. I tell him about running, structured routines, regular counseling, and the emergency protocols I've developed for when things get hard. I tell him about the group text with Larkin, Vega, and Doc where we check in weekly. I tell him about the veteran mentor network I'm part of, where we rotate responsibility for being available at 0300 when someone's struggling. Recovery isn't solitary, I explain. You need a team. Not people who fix you, people who witness the work and respect the effort. That's what saved me. That's what sustains me. An Army major, older, decorated, careful with his words, asks the question everyone's been thinking. Ma'am, do you regret telling your story publicly? Given the career implications. I consider that. Really consider it. No, I say finally. Because staying silent means the next officer who struggles thinks they're alone. Means the next family mocks their service member for seeking help. Means we keep treating mental health and addiction like moral failures instead of operational injuries. If my story costs me a promotion but helps someone else survive recovery, that's a trade I'll make. The room is quiet. Then the major nods, slow and deliberate. Thank you, Commander. He uses the rank I don't have yet, might never have. But the respect in his voice is real. By the time the session ends, I'm exhausted. Good exhausted. The kind that comes from meaningful work, not from hiding. That evening, I'm back in my apartment, one bedroom, walking distance to the base, walls still mostly bare because I've never been good at decorating. I'm making dinner, pasta, simple, when my phone buzzes. Text from Larkin. Heard you killed it at the symposium. Proud of you, boss. I smile. Text back, just doing the work. His response is immediate. That's what makes you good at it. 3 more texts come in rapid succession. Vega, Doc says you made people cry. In a good way. Doc, accurate emotional impact assessment. Well done, ma'am. Rodriguez, you're still cooler than everyone else. Just saying. I laugh out loud. These idiots. These professionals. This team that saw me at my absolute worst and decided I was worth checking in on, worth believing in, worth fighting for. I'm setting my phone down when it rings. Unknown number. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. Lieutenant Commander Reese. Silence. Then, Jordan? It's your father. I freeze. Literally freeze, pasta fork halfway to my mouth. I set it down carefully. Process this. Decide how to respond. Hello. Neutral. Professional. Giving nothing. He pauses. Clears his throat. I heard you spoke at a symposium today. About recovery. About? Another pause. About what happened. I did. Someone I work with, his son's in the Navy. He was there. He told me what you said. About me. About how I treated you. I wait. Don't help him. This is his call, his discomfort. He owns it. I was wrong, he says finally. The words sound rusty, unpracticed. About what I said. How I acted. You were serving your country and I treated it like a joke. You needed help and I made it about me. About our image. I was wrong. I close my eyes. Breathe. This is what I wanted a year ago. Validation. Acknowledgement. Proof that I hadn't imagined the harm. But now, a year later, I realize something. I don't need it anymore. His apology doesn't undo the damage. Doesn't change the fact that I rebuilt myself without him. Doesn't erase the mockery, the abandonment, the casual cruelty. But it's still something. A start. Maybe. Thank you for saying that, I say carefully. That matters. Can we? He struggles with the words. Can we try again? Dinner? Just us. I think about my mother's apologies, our awkward coffee meetings. Think about boundaries and cost-benefit analysis and the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Not yet, I say. But maybe. Eventually. When I'm ready. I understand. He sounds relieved, actually. Like he was expecting me to say no entirely. Will you let me know? When you're ready. I will. Okay. Another pause. I'm proud of you, Jordan. What you're doing now. The teaching, the honesty. Your mother showed me the article about the symposium. You're helping people. That's good work. My throat tightens. Thank you. I'll wait for your call. Okay. We hang up. I sit there, phone in hand, processing. He's proud of me. Now, after a public speech and an article and external validation from his coworker's son. Not when I earned my commission. Not when I deployed. Not when I led SEALs through combat. But now, when strangers told him I was worth being proud of. It should feel good. It doesn't. It feels like what it is. Too late to fix what broke, but not too late to build something new. Something smaller, more careful, defined by clear boundaries and honest limitations. I can work with that. Eventually. I finish my pasta. Clean the kitchen. Check my email. There's one from Commander Vickers. Promotion board meets next month. Your name's on the roster. No guarantees, but your service record stands strong. The rest is up to them. Commander. Oh, 5. Next level up. More responsibility, more leadership. A year ago, I thought my career was over. Now I'm being considered for promotion. I'm not naive. The substance use disorder notation in my file will matter to some board members. My public disclosure about recovery will concern others. Some will see me as a liability. But some, maybe enough, will see me as exactly what the Navy needs. An officer who understands that strength includes acknowledging weakness, that leadership includes seeking help, that service sometimes means serving yourself first so you can serve others better. I'll know next month. Until then, I keep doing the work. I pull out my laptop, open the document I've been drafting for the past 3 months. It's a training protocol for unit commanders, a guide for supporting service members through mental health and addiction issues. Real protocols, not just be supportive platitudes. How to recognize warning signs. When to intervene. How to balance operational needs with individual welfare. What resources actually work. How to create command environments where asking for help isn't career suicide. I work on it until 2200, then close my laptop and get ready for bed. The routine is automatic now. Lock the doors, set the alarm, lay out tomorrow's PT gear, journal for 10 minutes, lights out. The same discipline that once kept me alive in combat now keeps me stable in recovery. Before I turn off the light, I write one entry in the journal. Day 365. 1 year clean. Spoke at symposium, went well. Father called, complicated but forward movement. Promotion board next month, outcome uncertain, but I'm ready either way. Still running every morning. Still checking in with the team. Still doing the work. Status, stable, functional, clear. No longer waiting for external validation. Built my own foundation. Next mission. Keep standing. Keep leading. Keep proving that falling doesn't disqualify you, it just changes the terrain you're operating in. Reese out. I close the journal. Turn off the light. Settle into bed. For the first time in 2 years, I fall asleep without medication, without dread, without wondering if I'm enough. I just sleep. Clean, simple, earned. And that, I'm learning, is what victory looks like in this particular war. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just stable. Just standing. 10 years later, I'm standing on a different podium in a different uniform. The eagles on my collar mark me as Captain 06, the rank I once thought impossible. The room is smaller this time, more intimate. 30 junior officers, all women, all at various stages of their careers. All invited to this closed-door leadership seminar because someone recommended them as high potential with unique challenges. I know what that means. I was once high potential with unique challenges, too. Commander Sarah Vickers, now Admiral Vickers, introduces me with the kind of brevity that comes from decades of friendship. Captain Reese has commanded 2 units, advised 3 task forces, and rebuilt our entire approach to mental health in special operations. More importantly, she's survived everything the Navy and life threw at her. Listen carefully. I step forward. The women in this room range from 25 to 40. Ensigns to lieutenant commanders. Different backgrounds, different struggles, same underlying question in their eyes. Can I survive this career and stay whole? I'm 46 now. My hair has gray threads I don't bother hiding. The scars on my shoulder ache when it rains. My left hand still tremors occasionally, Kandahar's permanent signature. But I'm here. I'm standing. I'm still serving. 10 years ago, I gave a speech about recovery and leadership. I told 200 people that falling apart doesn't disqualify you from command. It qualifies you differently. I believed it then. I know it now. I pause. Let them see me clearly, not the heroic version, not the sanitized one, just the real one. In the decade since, I've been promoted twice. I've commanded a training unit and a special operations support group. I've advised on policy reform for veteran mental health. I've testified before Congress about military addiction treatment. And I've stayed clean for 3,650 days. A young ensign in the front row blinks rapidly. She's counting, I realize. Making it real. I tell you this not to impress you, but to establish credibility. Because some of you are struggling right now. Some of you are medicating stress in ways you know aren't sustainable. Some of you are hiding injuries, physical or psychological, because your terrified admission means the end of your career. And I need you to hear this from someone who's been exactly where you are. Asking for help is not the end. It's a different kind of beginning. A lieutenant commander in the third row raises her hand. I nod. Ma'am, do the ghosts ever go away? The ones from combat. I appreciate the directness. No. They become quieter. You learn to carry them differently. I still think about Petty Officer Chin, the SEAL I lost in Kandahar, every single day. But now I think about what he taught me, not just how he died. That took years. Therapy. Work. Honesty. The ghosts don't leave. You just get stronger at carrying them. Another hand. Did your family ever really understand? I smile slightly. My mother tries. We have dinner once a month. It's cordial, sometimes warm. My father and I have coffee twice a year. We talk about safe topics, Navy policy, current events, nothing deep. My brother and I haven't spoken in 8 years. That's the honest answer. Some relationships repair. Some don't. You make peace with both. I see recognition on several faces. Family wounds are universal. 3 years after rehab, I met someone. I continue, shifting gears. A Marine officer, recently divorced, 2 kids, baggage matching mine. We dated for a year before I told him the full story, Kandahar, addiction, recovery, all of it. I was terrified he'd see me as damaged. Instead, he said, everyone's got scars. Yours just have better stories. Quiet laughter. I smile for real now. We've been married 6 years. His kids call me Captain Jordan because they think it's funny. He reminds me to go to counseling when I start using work to avoid feelings. I remind him that deployments end and therapy helps. We're not perfect, but we're honest. That matters more. A young lieutenant, barely 30, asks the question they're all thinking. Ma'am, how do you balance it? Command responsibilities and personal recovery. I lean against the podium. Carefully. Imperfectly. I still run every morning 05:30, 5 miles, non-negotiable. I still see my counselor monthly. I still check in with my SEAL team. Larkin's a captain now, Vega retired and teaches at BUD/S, Doc's a senior chief. We have a group chat that's mostly terrible jokes and occasional real talk. Structure sustains me. Community sustains me. Honesty sustains me. I click to a slide. It shows a simple pyramid. Foundation, framework, function. Foundation is daily discipline. Sleep, exercise, nutrition, medication compliance if needed. I take something for the nerve damage still, monitored carefully. Framework is your support system. Therapist, trusted colleagues, family if they're healthy, friends who know the real you. Function is the work itself, command, leadership, service. You can't have function without framework. You can't have framework without foundation. It's that simple and that hard. An ensign raises her hand tentatively. What if you don't have framework? What if you're isolated? Build it, I say firmly. One person at a time. I started with my treatment counselor. Added a veteran support group. Reconnected with my SEAL unit. Found a mentor, Admiral Vickers. Each connection was intentional. Strategic. You're military officers. You know how to build operational networks. Apply that skill to your personal life. I advance the slide. This one's a photo, me in dress blues, shaking hands with the Secretary of the Navy. 3 years ago, receiving a commendation for developing the mental health protocols now used across special operations. This happened because I was honest about breaking, I explain. Because I turned my worst experience into institutional knowledge. The protocols I developed: early intervention for substance use, peer support networks, command training for mental health response. Those exist because I failed first and learned from it. Your struggles aren't just personal. They're professional intelligence. Use them. The lieutenant commander from earlier speaks without raising her hand. Do you ever regret going public? Telling your story? I consider the question seriously. Sometimes. When I see my recovery discussed in briefings I'm not part of. When someone treats me carefully, like I'm fragile. When promotion boards take longer than usual, and I wonder if the notation in my file is the reason. But mostly? No. Because I get emails every week from service members who say my story gave them permission to ask for help. That's worth the cost. I check my watch. 20 minutes left. Here's what I wish someone had told me 20 years ago. Perfect is not the standard. Sustainable is. You don't have to be unbreakable. You have to be resilient, which means you bend, sometimes break, but you learn to repair yourself. Command isn't about never falling. It's about standing back up and teaching others how. A long pause. Then I tell them something I've never said publicly. Last month I had a bad day. 20-year anniversary of the Kandahar operation. I woke up at 0300 with a panic attack. First one in years. I sat on my bathroom floor, shaking, wondering if I'd ever really be okay. My husband found me, sat down next to me, didn't try to fix it. Just sat there. After 20 minutes, I called my counselor. Emergency session at 0700. We worked through it. By 0900, I was at my desk, doing my job. I see shock on some faces. Good. They need to see this. Recovery isn't linear. 10 years clean doesn't mean immune. It means I have tools now. I know what to do when things get hard. That's the difference. Not that I don't struggle, that I know how to struggle effectively. Final slide. Same sentence from 10 years ago. It's not where you fell that defines you, it's who saw you stand back up. You're going to fall, I tell them. Different ways, different times. Some of you already have. When it happens, when you're on the intake line or the bathroom floor or wherever your bottom is, remember this. Falling doesn't end your story. It changes the plot. And sometimes the best leaders are the ones who've been broken and learned to rebuild stronger. I close my laptop. Face them directly. The Navy gave me a second chance. Then a third. Then promotion after promotion. Not despite my recovery, but informed by it. Because I learned something in rehab I never learned in training. Real strength isn't pretending you're invincible. It's knowing your limits and asking for help before you exceed them. Admiral Vickers stands. Questions. The ensign from earlier raises her hand, voice quiet. Ma'am, I'm struggling. I didn't know until today that it was okay to say that out loud. I walk down from the podium. Stand directly in front of her. Meet her eyes. It's okay, I say. And it's brave. Come find me after. We'll talk. You're not alone anymore. She nods, tears streaming. Half the room is crying now. Not sad tears, recognition tears. Relief tears. The kind that come when someone finally gives you permission to be human. This is the work. Not the combat operations or the policy reforms or the promotions. This. Standing in a room with struggling officers and showing them that survival is possible. That leadership includes leading yourself through hell. That falling is not the end. 2 hours later, I've exchanged contact information with 7 officers, scheduled follow-ups with 3, and referred 2 to immediate counseling. It's 1700 when I finally leave the building. My phone buzzes. Text from Larkin. Heard you made more officers cry. You're dangerously good at that. I smile. Text back, it's a gift. His response, truth is always a gift, boss. Even when it hurts. I drive home through San Diego traffic, thinking about that ensign's face. About the courage it took to speak up. About the decade I've spent proving that broken things can still be useful. My husband's cooking dinner when I arrive. The kids are doing homework at the table. Normal. Domestic. Nothing like Kandahar and everything like the life I built after. How'd it go? He asks. Hard. Good. Necessary. He kisses my forehead. That's my captain. That night, before bed, I update my journal. The entries are shorter now, less tactical. Day 3650. Spoke to junior officers about recovery and leadership. Still the hardest work and the most important. Still standing. Still serving. Still proving every day that falling doesn't disqualify you. It just changes your mission parameters. Chin would be proud. I finally believe that. I close the journal. Turn off the light. Sleep comes easy these days. Tomorrow, I'll run at 0530. Check in with my counselor. Command my unit. Continue the work. Because this is what 26 years of service looks like. Scars and medals, ghosts and resilience, falling and standing, breaking and healing. All of it. Honest. Ongoing. Enough. Thanks for staying with me. If this hit home, tap like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your thoughts below. I read every comment. Questions for you. Who surprised you by showing up when others didn't? What boundary did you set that changed everything? If your family mocked your lowest moment, what would you do next? For those in recovery, what tool or routine actually works for you? What would you tell your past self on the day everything fell apart? I'll be in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and keep going. You're not alone.